Welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast with me, Pete Tigers. I'm sure you're similar, that aside from standing by water, my next favourite place is probably to be in a tackle shop. I'm lucky enough to be in one right now, as I'm sitting with Howard Thresher, owner of Fly Fishing Tackle UK, based in Crediton, Devon. The shop is an Aladdin's cave that you can easily lose a lot of time looking at all the good things on the shelf. I plan to learn about Howard's fly fishing life, how it ties in with his work, and a place that is special to him. Howard, it's great to catch up with you. It's been far too long. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Peter, and I'm pleased to say still fit and healthy, and so is Helen and Sandra, so yeah, we're all well, thank you.
I'm pleased to hear that. Now, the important stuff out the way, have you been fishing recently?
Yes, well, surprisingly, I have. I haven't been fishing that often, but I've had one trip up to Wales in the last month, and last Saturday, I had visited the Froome and had a really good day at Rackleford House. So, yeah, I am catching fish, a few.
Nice, and that's good to hear. Yeah. And the mayfly's still around there?
There are a few, but it was more olives that were hatching than mayfly.
That's great to hear. And for here, it's kind of funny, isn't it, that we're sort of in the middle of mid-Devon. There are so many wonderful streams around here. And it's kind of nice, though, isn't it, to dip your toes into the chalk streams every now and again, too, isn't it?
It is. It's totally different. I still prefer the local streams and my streams in Wales, but chalk streams have a certain magic about them. It's just being there, the peace and tranquility of it, and the beauty. Yes, it's nice to see the fish rising to the fly, not see it having risen, if you follow me. It's just that difference.
And for you as well, is it being able to, because I know when I make those trips that being able to see the fish is quite thrilling as well, isn't it? And we learn a little bit by watching what the fish are up to as well,
Indeed.
Don't we?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes see a fly go past the fish and it will follow it downstream 5-6 foot sometimes, which you never see on our streams. Normally I would have lifted the fly off the water and missed the darn thing, but yeah, it is a totally different situation, and you can sometimes see them move quite a bit across the stream as well. Their eyesight is quite amazing. I still can't get over fish's eyesight. It's meant to be a primitive eye, but it sees far more than we do, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as a former vet, do those sorts of things fascinate you too?
They do, definitely. Yes, it's being a vet has had quite a big influence on how I've looked on nature and everything else, I think. So, yeah.
Nice. And so when you're fishing those chalk streams, are you fishing to those rising fish? And comparable to the streams around the Crediton area, are you fishing the water? And is that a nice, pleasing change, or do you fish in a similar way?
I think if there are rising fish, I fish in a similar way. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Although sometimes on chalk streams you can get a bit greedy, particularly if they're stocked. Whereas on our waters down here, you don't want to sort of alert any fish in between and scare them off upstream, or you put the whole lot down. Somehow it doesn't seem to happen on chalk streams quite the same. There's a stronger current coming down and they're less influenced, I think, by fish moving forward.
That's a really interesting point, because I was having this conversation with somebody just the other day, and we were talking about, chalk stream fish generally will come, they don't spook as far, yeah, and they come back on station relatively quickly too, don't they?
They do indeed, yeah.
And what do you think that's that strength of the water, do you think, that stops them doing that?
I think so. I don't think they get scared in quite the same way. The wild fish in particular, where there's very low flow, and that for a large part of our rivers, you might have a strong current in one bit of it, but the fish sit off that current. In a chalk stream, you've got a fairly uniform current right across the stream. And so it's a different ballpark, really.
Yeah, but it feels kind of nice to get back to the streams here, right?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, they're incredibly special, and I've made no secret of the fact of what they mean to me. But you touched on something. I don't want you to name the river, but you mentioned Wales, and I know you sent me an email with some beautiful pictures. The river that you were visiting, and I know that you go up for a certain amount of time each year at least that I'm aware of. It's special to you, isn't it?
Yes, it's. I would say it more or less kept my sanity when I was a veterinary surgeon. I was a single-handed practice, so I couldn't get much time off. And if I tried to fish here, I was always on the end of a pager or something else, and you just can't enjoy it the same. There, I've got 2.5 miles where no mobile phone will reach you, and you can't drive back from there to answer a call. So yeah, I used to go up for just 2 days at a time, stay overnight, and I'd have a locum for the 2 days and 1 night. And I would set off at 3:30 in the morning, and I'd be back about 11 o'clock on the following night. So yeah, it was exhausting, but really lovely if you could just get lost. And then we'd have holidays up there, a week or 2 weeks. And doing river work up there again, sometimes it took a week or 2 to get things in order. So all in all, it was wonderful time.
And you mentioned the word river work on there, and this is a really special. You bought, if I remember rightly, you bought this section of water from a fishing club, and the sense I got was that it was pretty much fished out. And you did a lot of maintenance, habitat work, everything else, and have brought it back over the years and done. It's been a real labour of love for you, hasn't it?
It has indeed. Yeah. No, it's my ashes will be shaken into the river or cast off the top of the hill there when I die. I've already arranged that in my will. It's something which is just very, very special to me.
And how would you describe it for listeners as a river?
Well, it's a mountainous river. It's quite varied in its streams, but it's a stony bed. It has some very deep holding pools, which means that the big trout don't drift downstream and disappear into I'll say the Severn. I think that's a safe enough thing to say. The type of stream it is it's rocky, deep pools. It's got trout, it's got grayling, it's got salmon, but the salmon only come up after the end of the season, and I'm not particularly interested in those. It's just pure wild trout, and I love it.
And there are, I guess it's fair to say that Wales is synonymous with some nice size fish, and you have some nice fish there.
Yeah.
And that is great. What about from a hatch point of view? Is that something that you're tuning your trips in with as well, or you sort of fit your visits around time more than anything else?
It's more around, I fit it more around what time I can get. I try to choose certain months, but within those months I can't always choose too well. And that area of Wales has very changeable weather. You can't predict what you're going to get. Much the same as you can't if you're saying you're going up to fish the Spey or something else. It's you just got to take pot luck. But generally speaking, that doesn't really matter to me. If it gets a bad time, well, I still enjoy it. And other times it's a bounty if we get extra fish.
And does it tend to, how would you view it? Do you view it as a early season river primarily as a strength, like some of the rivers in Wales, or is it more middle to back end, or it's pretty consistent throughout?
It's pretty consistent throughout. Fishing is different at different times of year. In the summer, in June, July, August, then you should get up early and fish till about 9 o'clock. And go start fishing again at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. In the middle of the day, you'll get nothing unless it's thundery or it's wet and overcast. Then the fish will be feeding. Whereas it's a difficult one really on that sort of aspect. But generally speaking, I still expect to catch the same number of fish at any time that I go. So yeah, it's an all year fishery in that sense. And there's the grayling as well, help to fill in any gaps.
Yeah, it sounds very, very civilised. And how do you like to fish that? The fish pretty free rising? Because I know you and I know you as an angler and how you like to fish. Does that, I guess that ties in for you as well, the fish, are they free rising?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Hatches are very irregular, I would say. So, but once the hatch is on, then the fish will rise. So yes, I generally fish dry fly, shuttlecocks, something like that. Failing that, search for maybe with something like a black gnat with a nymph hanging off the end of it, just very, very light nymph. And if worse comes to worse and the river's up very high, then I will occasionally fish couple of very heavy Van Klinken reverse case caddis. But it's one of those things where I don't like to do that if I don't have to.
Nice. And how did that feel then when this, how can you tell us a little bit about the story of how this all came about and how you became the owner of it? And how did you feel when you actually owned this bit of water as well?
Right. Well, I was recovering from some crushed ribs at the time. I'd been doing TT testing in a herringbone parlour, and I was put off work for several weeks. And during that time, I started to look around for fishing that the club could buy in Devon. And nowhere could I find, you could lease water, but you couldn't buy it anywhere. And I wondered whether it was the same over the rest of the country. So I started looking at all the adverts, and there was a company called Harrison Stokes in Hereford who specialised in fisheries. And amongst it, they had 2 trout streams which were for sale. They were being sold by Birmingham Anglers, as it was then. And the price seemed quite reasonable in a sense, but I was more interested to see what they were like. And I had a very good friend who lived near one of these, and he said, I'll take you up there and we'll have a look at it. So I was expecting something about 5 foot wide, 6 foot, by the way, this mountain stream. I just thought it was like a little stream. And when we got there, admittedly, it was in October when the river was high. But I said, this is the wrong place. This is bigger than the Teen. So we walked down it, and I just couldn't believe it. Yeah. So on the back of this, I thought I must have it. It was just so wonderful to see it. It's a beautiful scenery, wildlife. And so I went back home, and I remortgaged the house, and found the money to buy the fishing, and I've never regretted that. It's been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
I can see how happy it makes you, and having fished it with you, I can see how happy. And I used the term fished out earlier. Would that have been a fair description when you first took it on?
Yeah. The first year I only saw 2 fish. That was all I ever saw. I was horrified. But things improved. I set up a stocking policy where we, for the first 2-3 years, we put fingerlings in. And then after that, and fry, mainly fry. And we put them in with a watering can down through the system. And after I stopped the fingerlings and just had the fry then for about another 6 years. And I then I was catching bigger fish anyway by then, because some were migrating back into the system. And so in the autumn, I would spin with a single hook and catch big fish. And I'd take them over to the fish farm at Machynlleth, put them in a barrel, put a sack over the top so that the water gets oxygenated as you drive like mad, because it's about 45 minutes. And he would then strip them out, and I'd have the fry back the next year to put back in the river. And I did that for probably about another 10 years. And gradually things got back to normal. Yeah, I would say.
That must have been amazing as well. And when you're fishing, catching those fish, that must have made it feel you're in a special place that you've bought and you own and you've brought back to life. And then you're starting to catch these fish. It must have been an amazing feeling.
It was. Yeah, it really was. It was even nice to catch the small fish because you realised they were there and they were actually there as the result of what you'd done. So, yes, I never mind if I caught a small fish as long as I didn't damage it. I think that was great. Yeah.
And did that mean then that when you got back, were you going relatively regularly in those days then and getting down there as much as you can? Because I know you've told me the story years and years back, and it was backbreaking work. It wasn't just as you've described it. It was a whole lot more physically and probably mentally draining as well, doing that amount of work plus the drives on top of it as well.
Yeah.
It was a hell of a lot of work, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but it was a great way to relax from being a vet. So, I enjoyed being a vet as well, don't get me wrong, but when you're being a vet every day, 24 hours a day, then you do need something else to do. And I don't, anything which will occupy your mind like that is a holiday, regardless of how much hard work it is. Yeah, I enjoy hard work, I think.
And do you get up there in the winter to fish for the grayling as well, or do you just sort of leave it at that?
No, I try to get up a couple of times in the winter. Usually go up sort of October, November time. Sometimes go up there to see the salmon spawning. So yeah, it's got less in the last few years because we've got busier and busier here, and staff sort of shortages as well has meant that I've had to work longer hours. So that has been one sort of regret, but it's turning around a bit again now. So I think hopefully I'll get more time back on the river.
Fantastic. And it lends itself to me, I guess, I don't know now these days, but to camping there as well. Did you used to stay in a tent and be close to the river and hear the sound of the river?
Oh, yeah.
Whilst you slept?
Yeah. Yes, I did. Yeah, I was two places. One place right beside the river on slightly sloping ground. So you get in the tent and in the morning you find your feet would sort of slide out towards the river. Unfortunately, the storms and the floods have washed half that grassy bank away now. And the other place was a very high lookout point. And I pitched my tent up there one year. And we had underneath an oak tree. And that night we had a thunderstorm. And I was just quaking in my boots, thinking, please don't strike this one tree on top of a flipping mountain. Fortunately, I survived the night. I didn't sleep a wink. But unfortunately, the next day I slipped up in the river and broke a toe. And then I had to try and clamber all the way up there to get my gear again. So, yeah, I have some, I wouldn't say fond memories of that, but it sticks in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And those moments then that you had in those days, my guess is that you got there, fished pretty hard, did some work. You're back a couple of weeks from visiting. Is it a different sort of affair when you get there now? Is it slightly more relaxed? Is it different? Or do you have the same similar sort of way of fishing that you said, we'll fish in the morning, get up early, fish in the morning, and then fish later on? Do you fish in a similar sort of way as you've always done?
Fairly similar. I very often go up with Mo, my friend, Mo Graham. And so that's, we decide between us amicably what we're going to do. Sometimes we don't even fish the river. Sometimes we'll go across to the coast and fish for bass or something else. If the conditions are bad, then we'll find something else. If the conditions are right to fish on the river, we will always fish the river. And we want to make the most of the time we're up there. So even if I would say we use the times when the fish aren't rising to do the bank work and the tree surgery or whatever else that needs doing. There's very often quite big oak trees get washed into the river, and it's quite a job to get them out. So yeah, it's just good mix of things.
And we're getting, for listeners, a sense of your passion and love for this particular river and fishing as a whole. How would you describe yourself as a fly angler?
Very moderate. Yeah. I'm not one for the pot. I'm not one for trophy fishing. I don't really like sort of holding up fish. I did once upon a time. It was new to me, but now I would rather try to release the fish in the water if I can. Occasionally I'll lift one out very briefly out the net before I put it back in. But yes, I don't seem to have the same stamina, but I'm 77, so it starts to hit you after a while. And you fish for sort of 4 or 5 hours non-stop, I feel really tired.
That's a good tide, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And this ties in nicely now as well, because you mentioned about when you bought the fishing that you were looking for the fishing club, and the fishing club is the Crediton Fly Fishing Club, which is a fantastic one, which I hope listeners will check out. And I remember 25 years ago when I was heading to this part of the world and I found out that Crediton would be the nearest town, that I found this thing called Google or whatever it was at that particular time and put Crediton and fly fishing in with very, very low expectations, and was astounded to see there was a fly fishing club in Crediton and it only had a bloody website as well. I detect your fingers on that website. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. No, it was my baby, as it's actually. Yeah.
And it was a great site, and I didn't know that much about the fishing in the area. Of course, West Country fishing, yes, but about this area, and that website had maps on it. It had stuff that you would see on a club website now that you take for granted. There was just hardly anyone doing that. No. Did you recognise that need, and was that something again that you were expressing an interest away from your veterinary work to look at websites and developing websites then?
The website bit, developing websites and promoting them, came later. Initially I wanted to get more members for the club, and so this is the best way of trying to spread the word about the club and how good it was, what the fish are like, what the fishing's like. And I've always been sort of quite interested in IT and whatnot, so that wasn't difficult. And I accidentally found out about website optimization at a time when very few other people were doing it. So the website was up there and people would come to me and say, how come every time I type in Exeter or Crediton, I get the Crediton Fly Fishing Club? It's that sort of thing. And so that was interesting. I have a friend, but he asked me if I would do some optimization of some websites for him. He's a graphic designer. And I did a few of those whilst I was still a vet, just in spare time. And I applied a lot of the knowledge to the Crediton Fly Fishing Club website as well. And I suppose that's how it started. Turn of the century, millennium year, I decided I'd had enough, 31 years as a veterinary surgeon, and I really wanted out, but I couldn't afford to retire. I had to find something else to do. And my friend said to me, well, look, why don't you optimize websites? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, yeah, but I don't think I'm going to make much of a living out of that. But he had some quite big contacts, quite big business that needed websites optimizing. And so we set up the business. It was called Raise Your Sites. And it progressed there for 2 or 3 years. Eventually it got to a stage where designers don't like to design websites for someone to optimize them. They want to make it look flashy and nice, but they don't have a clue about, I should, in those days anyway, about optimization. And so there was a conflict a bit, I think. And in the end, my friend very kindly, sort of graciously gave up his share in the business. And at the same time, I was actually designing a website for another tackle shop close by. And it was an online sales and everything else. And they then decided that they'd rather spend the money on the fabric of their building. And I was left with this website. And I'd already made contacts with a couple of companies. Snowby was one and Turrells was another, asking about drop shipping. And they said, yes, okay, yes, we'll do that. And within a month, I would say, of sort of setting it up, we were having orders coming in. And within a year, it was taking over more than 50% of my total business. And from then on, I still carried on optimizing websites for people, but gradually I became less and less as the business took off. It got to a stage where things change. Most of the manufacturers don't like drop shipping, and understandably, although they're now going back that way, I understand. But it was being made more difficult, or we would get better terms if we bought the products and sold it on. So in the end, we started to fill up our offices with fishing tackle. It got to the stage after about 5 years, when we got to the stage where we just couldn't stick any more stock in our rooms. So at that stage, the shop was being built in the town square. So I took out a lease on it, and it was a bit of a jump in the dark, really. But we felt that it's not going to. It had to be something here. And Crediton isn't a town which would support a fishing tackle shop normally, but because we've got the internet and contact with people, they could find out that we were here. They would travel if we had the right sort of products. So that's what we did. We moved here and been here ever since, basically. Yeah.
I remember the old days when you were in at the other place, and it was really cool in a different way, because it was almost like a secret society, wasn't it? That you sort of had to go into another building and sort of knock and then go almost into Narnia through a wardrobe to come into your offices. And it was really, really cool, wasn't it? In a different way. Yeah. And was that leap from, like you say, the drop ship to, and this is a lovely square footage. There is tackle we're sitting in the office part of it now, and I'm looking probably conservatively at probably 100 rods, I would say. There's from everyone from Orvis to Vision to Sage to Orvis, Hardy. There is just everything. It's really quite a dangerous place for me to be. And this is just the packing area. I'm looking around behind me, and there's baseball caps, and that's not in the main shop part of it itself. Yeah, I can see a Hardy box by the files here and everything else. That must have been a colossal leap of faith, and also a really hard one to think through as well, isn't it? Because the game changes dramatically for you as a result, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it does. And it's been a risky business throughout the whole time. For the main part, I don't like borrowing money which I don't think I'm going to be able to pay back. And so it's one of those situations where we're constrained quite a lot. And there have been times when every business needs capital. And I can remember going to a bank in Exeter, major ones, and speaking to their young under manager about a loan. We'd had loans from them in the past, and he told me that I was doing it all the wrong way, and I should be doing exactly what everyone else is doing. Which stage, so at the moment I got up and walked out. I said, the money isn't that important, thank you. It's one of those things where, capital, and it's a big investment. and it's worrying at times. But it's our way of running the business. And if we did what everyone else did, we wouldn't succeed because everyone's trying to do the same thing. It's one of those difficult things. We've had bad times because of it. At the moment, we're experiencing good times because we got the stock, whereas a lot of others haven't now got the stock. I think half of our sales that we get in the shop, people actually phone up and they want the product to be in stock. They don't say, I can get it for you in 2 or 3 days' time. They're getting fed up with this because very often they have to wait a fortnight or a month. And we're still guilty of it ourselves sometimes. We can't stock everything. If we have such a wide range, then we can only keep 1 or 2 of each. Whereas those that cherry pick the popular sizes can buy 10 of them, but they don't have the others. This is how our system works. And I don't think many others could probably afford to do it the way we do anyway. So it's fortunate that. So having that stock there is also very valuable to me in when people phone up and ask about a product. I can pick it up and say, yes, it's the such and such. It has a line weight of this, and I can handle it and think, yes, that will do for what you want. If you don't have that, you can't give that sort of information. And half of our online sales now probably phone us up first before they buy. And that's really an important thing. In the shop, again, shop sales are going up because the same reason. They don't want to buy waders online. They don't want to buy an expensive rod online. They don't even want to buy a cheap rod online if they don't know anything about it. So now they can come into the shop and experience it. It's not a case of us saying, yes, we'll get it for you later. We will always have a range of product that they can compare it with. And this, I think, has borne fruit over the last 5 years in particular.
And being smaller in numbers of people, that must allow you to be pretty agile as well in that sense as well, does it?
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah.
And you said about the web sales as well. Did that play into that strength for you and continues to because of your background of SEO? I don't even know if it was termed it then, actually, was it? Optimization,
Yes,
SEO.
yeah.
So did that sort of help and give you that little bit of a leg up when you got going as well?
Oh, it did, definitely. A big way, really. And the most important things are the basic facts that I started with still hold now. And you can waste a fortune on search engine optimization specialists who are actually doing very little. So I don't want to upset any of them who out there might be listening, but generally speaking, I'll give you an example, if I may. On Facebook, we do some promotions on there, and I don't usually spend more than about sort of £3 to £5 a day, and I generally get a response of sort of in the thousands of likes or whatever we're after. We had one the other day which I was renewing. I was spending £3 a day, and we were getting altogether, I think we'd had 4,000 likes over a period of about 4 days. And at the bottom, Facebook had put other businesses have generally spending £150 a day and getting 700 responses. And I thought, well, why on earth are they putting that there? You know, but because you're paying someone else to do it, the more money they spend, the more percentage they get. And so I try to avoid stepping outside that sort of limit. And I think the basics hold. All the other bits are just flippery, which you're paying a lot of money for.
Nice point, well made. And I was thinking about, you say I'm looking at the stock and what you said of having the stock there as well. And sometimes people understand in certain environments where people are cost conscious and say, oh, well, you're making, but you're having to write checks for huge amount of tackle, and because there's commitments, isn't there, with distributors or manufacturers that you have to commit to that. You're taking the risk as well, aren't you?
Yes.
That you're having to buy stuff that you've got to sit on, or you may have to sit on for quite some time. And there's an inherent risk with that as well, isn't there?
There's two main risks. One, the manufacturer themselves may bring out another product without warning, and you're left with it. Secondly, you can never sell it back to them. So it's something to bear in mind, I think. So yeah, it does affect how what profit you try to make on things. And generally speaking, they have a recommended price, and we stick fairly closely to that. Usually around about that or 10% under, which most of the other main businesses do as well. It's but soon as something becomes, you sense that it is no longer going to be the top model next year, then you will start to think, I've got to mark this down.
And that becomes a challenge in itself, because I guess your competitors are thinking a similar thing as well. So then it could easily become a free-for-all in some respects, couldn't it?
Yes, it does sometimes, but I think overall, most people are not stupid. They're not going to do it for nothing. You do get gluts sometimes when manufacturers are greedy and get something made very, very cheaply, and so if they get hundreds of thousands made, and then they left it on their hands, and so they try to dump it, and they will dump it on one or two retailers. And that's where danger comes in, but that's only for a few products. And if you've got the range of product that we've got, it's only a small percentage.
It reminds me, that story, of us sitting in the coffee shop across the way there, and you were taking on a dealership, and you asked me to meet up with you and talk about those things. Yeah. And I remember saying to you, don't take this one because I think this one's going to be replaced pretty shortly, and those sorts of things. You've got to, yet your commitment was sizable, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was lovely to be a tiny wheel in that part to say, well, don't go with this, go with these ones, go with those ones. And it's it must be, you're doing that umpteen times with umpteen different manufacturers, that you've got to make those decisions on stuff that you think that you've got to sell. Does that mean that you're watching the industry and fishing itself? Right, this is a trend here, this is a trend there, that you're thinking, right, okay, well, that may express itself in my next order with somebody, that I may try something along those sorts of lines. Have there been things like that you've looked at, and have there been things that don't always work out the way that you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think you've got to have patience with your decisions. That's one thing, because it's easy to give up too quickly. People associate certain retailers with certain brands. So for you to get to that level takes a while. You can't just expect people to know that you've got it. And so sometimes you get disappointing results in the first year. You've got to take it all, make those sort of measured decisions, I would say, on those sort of things. It's I think you've got to be able to spot the niches as well. And if something which sells very well suddenly becomes unavailable, you've got to find another source of something similar. Fill those little niches all the time. There's an awful lot of fly rods out there which are very, very similar these days. So you're looking to find those which are specific for certain jobs. When nymphing came in, that became very, very important. And particularly the first few years of its popularity, there weren't that many being produced, and then suddenly everyone's producing their own nymph rod, and by that stage it's almost too late, I would say, for some of them, but they feel they've got to do it. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing where you just do have to keep your eye on the ball all the time.
Yeah, and that gives us a really good insight into the process of this, because it isn't just, I guess that's the lovely bit, isn't it, when you're thinking about those, I don't know if pre-season orders still exist, but those trying to get those right. And I guess there's that balance as well, isn't there, of making sure that you, as you say, have chosen the right things, but also you've got the right numbers that you think, I'm going to hold stock, but hopefully I'm not going to sell out of it too quickly as well. That must be a difficult thing.
It is very difficult. And it's where you can make most disastrous mistakes at times. But no, for the main part, I think you just got to be sensible about things, not be too greedy, not think, I'm going to make a bomb on this, I'll buy X number of things. I've seen too many closing down auctions where the fishing rods there in their 20 of the same rod being sold as a batch, simply because they bought them at 10% cheaper. Well, if you're only going to sell 2, it's not much point. It's that sort of thing. You've got to weigh up what else you could spend that money on. I think it's not a case of, I'll save the money. It's a case of, well, if I don't buy so many of those, I could also buy one of each of those, which give us a bigger range. And that is good. It's not good for the website, because it means I've got to do an awful lot of work putting it on the website. But it's that's one of those things you just got to put up with.
Yeah. And for people listening as well, that you say about people coming into the store, being able to buy stuff. I'm sure most of the people in Devon obviously know about it, but if people are coming down this way for holiday and are going to do a little bit of fishing, it might be on the coast or somewhere, you've got that covered anyway. But how would you describe the shop to people as they were to come in here and see it for the first time? I used the term Aladdin's Cave. That's why I was interested to see what you say.
Hopefully we think they think it's a sweet shop, basically. A lot of people come in and say that. And we're still getting people coming in from fairly, within 20, 30 miles who've no idea we were here. So I just assume they should do by now, but it doesn't work out that way. And we get quite a lot of new customers that way. We get an awful lot of people who come down, who've been customers online and are coming down on holiday, and they stop by, much the same as I used to drop in at John Norris's on the way up to Scotland. It's the same, a bit like that. I'm not saying that we are anything like the size of John Norris, but it has that sort of thing about it, really, I would say. So yes, and most people who come in, people say, well, this is a real fishing shop, isn't it? Which is really, that makes you feel good. You don't know how good that makes you feel. You feel, yes, I've done something here when that happens. But yeah, well, not just me, it's the others as well. But yeah,
and it is that sort of place that you can always sort of, I would set aside a lot of time to wander around and have a look at everything, because there is so much. There's a comprehensive tying section. There is more tackle. As I said, you've got a sense of it, and I'm looking at those rods again. There is a bunch of stuff. You can go out the front and try a rod should you want to. So it's nice and easy to do that. You've got a friendly bunch of people involved with the shop as well, which makes it really, really important as well. And as listeners will know, I'll always shout about fly fishing tackle shops and how it's really important to support what they're doing. And what I was trying to do with this, where this conversation was going, was for people to see how people like Howard and others, and Helen here of course as well, are putting their metaphorical balls on the line and doing this for, yes, they've got to pay the mortgage, of course, but also there is a lot of stuff for you to choose from, and that is a really key thing as well. So I'll continue to shout for fly fishing tackle shops, and this is a wonderful example of a small independent one with a big footprint. And yeah, if you get the chance to pop along, I would recommend it heartily. We've talked a little bit about the shop, and we touched on the Crediton Fly Fishing Club, and I talked about the website. And the reason I talk about that is that their water is their section of the tour. My love affair with the tour began on that water, and I learned a lot about West Country fishing on that water. And the wonderful thing I always say about the Crediton Fly Fishing Club is the variety of water as well. The progressive nature in which it's been run, and when clubs were stocking, you were way ahead of just this is a wild fish. This is 20 plus years ago when clubs thought, right, well, that may be the way to do it.
34 years ago.
There we go, that you stopped stocking. So this is way ahead of the curve. You had a website way ahead of the curve. It's called the Crediton Fly Fishing Club. There's the streams around Crediton as well. But you've got more as well, isn't there?
Oh, yes, yeah. A lovely stretch on the Culm at Willand, about 1.5 miles there. We've got, as you say, the Tor. We've got a tributary of the Tor, the Yeo at Lapford. We've got another stretch of the Crediton down just before it goes into the River Exe. So there's a lot of water. And in fact, it's quite strange, but other than maybe during the mayfly season, you hardly ever see another person fishing. They are, but there's so much water that it's you can easily get lost and not get found again.
And you won't be surprised to hear, you're getting probably a sense of Howard, you won't be surprised to hear that he's involved with the club too.
Yeah.
And what's your role?
I'm membership secretary now. I've been through virtually everything except chairman. At one stage I was secretary and treasurer. But yeah, it's nice to be involved, and membership secretary is a very easy job. So I've retired to that, I would say.
And for listeners to get a sense, so it's all wild fishing. There is, heaven knows how many miles of fishing, but there is plenty of it. What does it cost for people if they want to join?
Membership is £85 for the year. There's a joining fee of £35 in the first year. Senior citizens, the membership is £65. Those who are still in full-time education up to the age of 18, I believe, it's only about £10, I think. So it's dirt cheap for any youngster who wants to fish. And I'm pleased to say that we have got one or two youngsters starting again now. And certainly in the shop, I'm seeing quite a lot more people in both youngsters and people up to the age of 30 who seem to be taking it up, which is unusual because I'd say for the last 30 odd years it's been declining. But yeah, there's more and more people that seems to be coming back into fly fishing now.
And that's a really well-educated comment as well, isn't it? Because you're seeing the people physically, and we often on here talk about people taking up fishing, we need to find people, but you're seeing that. Yeah. Where do you think that's coming from?
I think one of the main things probably is Mortimer and Whitehouse, to be honest. Not that I watch very much of it myself, but it's certainly had quite the big effect, I think, and great that they've done that. So that's helped a lot. It's become, I would say, COVID also played quite a big part. Yeah, I think people had to find things to do locally and as well, so outdoors you could go out, you could go fishing when you couldn't go and do any other recreation just about, so that must have helped. So yeah, and obviously publicity for the club itself, obviously we try to maintain, so talking in a sort of general way, Mortimer and Whitehouse, but obviously for Crediton Fly Fishing Club, a lot of it's down to links that we have, the shop as well. When people come in the shop, then we generally, if people want to know where to fish, then we would recommend our waters, obviously, because I would recommend our waters. So that helps. Probably, yeah, we've had 17 new members this year, which is the largest number we've had for quite a while. And I know a lot of other clubs are currently struggling. So I would say, keep heart, and it'll come back probably if you work hard at it. Because it's one of those things where it's quite daunting for people who run a club when they see membership falling to know what to do. This is quite hard, I think. I know some local clubs have suffered in recent years, but they've all kept going, and that's the important thing. I think you've got to do that, and you've got to do a bit of selling. Yeah.
Nicely put, and that's encouraging to hear those sorts of things too. So that is fantastic to hear about. How do you think then fly fishing's looking to you right now? Is it in, you've talked about those spikes, the TV program, COVID. Do you think it's in pretty good shape?
Yeah. Yes. I think carp fishing's had its peak, which is one of the things which took. But carp fishing has had its peak, in that it took a lot of people away from other forms of fishing at one stage. Particularly the youngsters, they were going into that and not doing anything else. I think people are moving back a bit. I think it's in reasonable good shape for the future. I just we need good water. I think that's the other big thing, and our water is being seriously threatened at the moment, both by the water companies and by agriculture. And this is a very serious thing. I think it's the most serious thing that's threatened the industry. And there doesn't seem to be much sign of it going away at the moment. But it's one thing which I am aware of every day, just driving into work. The mud on the roads, which is washing off the fields, and the slurry, it's having a very big effect on rivers. It doesn't seem to be affecting the trout population in our rivers at the moment, but it does make some of the streams not look so nice. So at times, anyway, I have to say that it was one of those things which, if you don't raise it, then no one's going to do anything about it. But I think otherwise it's all going well. I think there's a lot of people out there who are actually doing things on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Amy Battams, for example, brilliant. How could you not want to fish when you've seen her?
Yeah, absolutely. She was down this way recently, and we were trying to get together actually to do a podcast.
You do.
We're going to hopefully at some time in the future. So Amy, if you're listening, well, I know we've been talking the last few days as well, so it would be great to have you along, and the positive influence that you have on people in fishing. So yes, long may those continue, along with everyone else who is pushing fishing in a positive way.
Fergal Sharkey, again, wonderful. Keep on every day, doesn't let up. No. And that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's what we've got to keep doing. We've got to keep pushing. We've got to keep pushing these stories so that people and the wider public are aware of them. So the more that we can do, the better. And that reminded me a little bit as well about John, who designs the magazine. He and I were fishing just very, very recently, and he put some pictures up, and somebody said, the colour of the water. And that was interesting that people had noticed that. Yeah. We know where that's coming from. And I walk the dog every day, and you see the stuff, like you say, on the roads, and you think, because part of me thinks perhaps I should just try and shovel some of this up. It's like that bad in some, but it's going to have no impact. Yeah, it will be there again, and that's the problem. But we're going to move on from that, because I know we were talking about this before we started recording, and I'll get myself in trouble, and I'm sure you may as well. But let's end on a positive, because we're coming up an hour now. Do you've talked about this wonderful stream in Wales, the wonderful fishing that you've got locally here. You were enjoying a chalk stream. I know we've fished chalk streams together a number of times, actually, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Over the years as well. And I was talking about one of those special days that we had on the Wiley, and we barely fished, did we? We had you, me, Peter Hayes,
Yes.
and we were just talking about fishing, weren't we?
Yeah,
And
indeed.
which was one of those special ones. But if you had a dream destination, where's the place that you would love to visit? Where's the that one place that you'd love to tick off the list?
I'd like to go on the Path by the Water by A.L. Haldane. It's a book which he wrote a long time ago, and I can't even remember where it was other than it's out near in the Highlands. But I'd just like to relive his memories, I think. Yeah.
That sounds very civilised, and I'm going to look that up afterwards as well. Howard, it has been, as ever, always lovely to chat with you, and we get a lovely insight into what goes on into running a fishing tackle shop, because it's a dream job. A lot of us do think about, wow, wouldn't that be fantastic? And it's been really nice to get the insider's view of what is involved with that as well. So it's been fantastic from that point of view. All I can do is keep shouting, please, please, please support tackle shops. It's really, really important for our industry, and just for places that you can get information as well, and you can get a permit to go fish the Crediton water along with a lot of other stuff, and hear from Howard and Helen about where somewhere is fishing, what is going on, where they should go. Those sorts of things in themselves are really, really important, and you can get that sort of information from them, and like I said, get to cast a few rods as well. So Howard, if people want to track down Fly Fishing Tackle UK, how do they find, what are your website details?
The website details are www.fly-fishing-tackle.co.uk.
And you're on Twitter as well, aren't you?
We're on Twitter and Facebook.
As the same names, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, they are. But yeah, they will be found.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, please go take a look at those. Like I say, there is lots of stuff on there to drool over, so hopefully you will enjoy this. This has come about. I just wanted to catch up with Howard. He's not asked to come on here. I've asked him along, and just wanted to chat and give listeners an idea of what goes into this as well. So hopefully you've got a better understanding of it as well. You've got to learn a little bit about Howard and what is happening, his love and passion. What he has done on that stream in Wales is absolutely amazing, and I know a little bit more about it, and he's been dreadfully polite, and he has been very modest about what he's done for that river. So that has been fantastic. But go check out their website, go check out their socials, give them a like if you can. Howard, has been, as always, wonderful to talk with you today. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Fly Culture podcast today.
My pleasure, Peter. Thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. Everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture podcast. These are always free to download. I'm never going to charge you for them. I just love hearing people's stories, hearing about fishing, talking about fishing. Of course, we all love talking about fishing tackle, don't we? So, as ever, there's going to be plenty more of these coming down the line. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Fly Culture podcast.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.